So you got the vote of confidence from Mac. You got it from the donors. Now go do something.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Ryan Herrings. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being an everydayer. Thank you for being part of this community. Thank you for being just a Badger fan and being the amazing people that you are. Thank you for making this your first listen every day. I really do appreciate every single one of you. Today's episode, we are talking about the importance of the last 4 weeks of the season. Do something with the vote of confidence. We were talking about some injury news. How are the Badgers going to replace a couple starters that went down? A decommitment on the recruiting front. Who are my top 5 players they have to keep in this recruiting class? And then a narrative that I keep seeing everywhere that is caught on like wildfire that I think is honestly just kind of BS. And I think I'm on an island with it because I think everybody disagrees with me. But let's start here. So I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about in today's show, right? And I do this to some degree every day. Like just let's like real talk for a second. Like doing a show every day, I'm constantly thinking about what quality content I can bring. So it's not repetitive, it's unique, it's my voice. And I was really kind of struggling with today. And I realized I think I can just need to step back and big picture this first segment a little bit. At times doing a daily show, it's almost like being a really good mechanic, which I'm not, by the way. But you're so into the nuts and bolts of everything. You're zip tying every wire. You're making sure every bolt is at the perfect torque. But you lose some of the big picture stuff that maybe if you did a show once a week, you focus more on those things, right? You focus on just the day-to-day minutia so intensely because you're doing a show every day. You don't always take a step back and just look at the big picture. And I wanted to do with this first segment, and this is just kind of, I actually didn't really plan this out. This is almost just kind of a fireside chat. And if you've been with Locked On Badgers for over a year, you remember the shows I used to do in my barn, and I have the fireplace in the back. And I would sometimes have it going on. It kind of felt like Teddy Roosevelt addressing the nation, like the fireside chat, State of the Union. Let's real talk. Let's just real talk for a second in this first segment, there's 4 games left in the season. You got the vote of confidence if you're Luke Fickell. You got the vote of confidence from Chris McIntosh. You got the vote of confidence from Kellner. You got the vote of confidence from the donors. It seems like you're going to be here for next year, right? It seems like you have all these votes of confidence and you're going to continue coaching this program. So now do something. Now you got to go do something with that vote of confidence. You got to go make these last 4 games matter. And I'm not saying they don't to him, but you have to do something a little differently. You're coming out of a bye week. You have to go out and coach like your life depends on it. This team needs it. This fan base needs it. They deserve it. What do I mean by that? I mean, you got to make the quarterback switch. Stop messing around. You have to make the quarterback switch. It's not Hunter Simmons' fault. He's not good enough for this, or he's just in a slump, whatever you want to call it. You have to make the switch. And quite frankly, you should just say that. You should just say we're making a switch. And I can understand if you want to have some subterfuge, if you don't want Washington to know exactly what you're going to come out with, if you don't want Washington to know exactly who you're going to be starting quarterback. I'm fine kind of messing around with playing with their mind a little bit, but you have to make the switch at quarterback. You have to. And if you don't, it's inexcusable. And I don't know if Carter Smith is fully ready, but I know he's a freshman with promise and upside and excitement. I know the fan base would get excited about it. And I know he's not going to be worse than Hunter Simmons, who started 1 of 13. I think Daniel Neal can still play in this. You have to make the quarterback switch, period. Absolute period. Let's start there. And then you have to come out no slow starts, which has been a trademark of this regime for a while. Start faster, coming off a bye. You got to talk to Coach Grimes, the offensive coordinator, and you have to say your best game plan right now. We're coming off a bye. Washington's good, but they're coming across the coast. They're playing kind of an early game for their body clock. I know it's not maybe the earliest kick we could have had, but your best game plan right now, coming out of a bye 2 weeks, you should be a little healthier. The run game looked improved. everything you got right now. Like, what's your best game plan? Figure it out and tailor it to whatever quarterbacks are going to play. No more holding back on that. I think Eugene Hilton needs to play, right? I mean, you scored 7 points against Oregon because of Eugene Hilton being in the game and making an adjustment on the play. Stop messing around. Put the players out there that want to play. You got to do something. No more calling, quite frankly, no more letting drives slip by because you're punting from the 45 or you're punting from the 40, right? You use timeouts where you need to use timeouts. You got to coach like this really matters the last 4 games. You have to coach like it really matters. You have to do something. And you do something for the fans because they need it. I mean, this fan base deserves it. But also to keep the recruiting class together, to build some momentum going into the offseason. Winning cures everything. Playing better cures everything. And you can build momentum going into the offseason. If you finish these 4 games, and not just finish these 4 games playing well, but winning a couple games. You got to win a couple games, right? You're getting healthier. You're coming off a bye. You got this home stretch. Make the quarterback switch. The defense is playing better. You maybe found something with getting Atuka. Lean on some other younger players and just coach like these last 4 games are everything. Put everything into it. And I know that might sound cliche, and I'm not saying they haven't put everything into it, but there's been games that felt like we were coaching not to lose. There's been games that felt like we didn't have the energy to play in. None of that the last 4. Again, you have the vote of confidences. Now go show why you have those votes of confidence. Go show why you're still going to be here next year. Go build some momentum, right? Go give these recruits a reason to stick here. Go give the fans something to cheer for. We all heard Barry Alvarez talk about fans are spoiled and, they shouldn't be booing. Well, go give them a reason not to boo. They don't want to boo. Nobody spends money and goes to a Badger game bleeding Cardinal red with the motion W and their kid with the eye paint on, and you're playing your game week around this. Nobody wants to go boo. Give them a reason not to. And again, this is really just me taking a step back and saying these last 4 games are so important. Don't play safe. Don't play the players who are young and who are fighting for it. Don't play safe. Go out there and try to throw some haymakers. Start fast. Don't punt from the 45 or the 40-yard line. It's a 2-6 season. Go try to force the issue. We saw, Oregon onside kick in the first possession, right? On the opening kickoff. We saw Ryan Day come in with his Ohio State team, that juggernaut, that steam train, and go for it multiple times on 4th down. Like, this is it, man. And I want this to work. Like, I'm a Badger fan like everybody else. We all want the same thing. We want a competitive team. And I think most people, even no matter where you are ready to cheer for this thing if it's working well. And these kids deserve it. The guys like Christian Allegro and Joe Bronner and Malman and Vinny Anthony, all these guys deserve it. Go show us something these last 4 games, man. Let's see we got comments in here. Let's get a couple of these. Good to see you live, Ryan. Man, Jim Thompson, it is good to see you. Yeah, we are going to talk about Reader in a second, Rob. Aiden Reader decommitted. Oh, Raul, thank you. Don't want to be that guy, but Fireside Chat's under FDR, not Teddy. No, thank you. Please. Very good correction. Franklin Roosevelt. But he would do these Fireside Chats and address the nation. And man, we should be able to do that again in this country, but we will this show will never get political. But just I love the authenticity of just sitting by a fire and giving some honest takes. And I used to kind of do that with my fire pit in the back. I don't have a fire pit anymore, but no, Raul, good man. Thank you for correcting me. Please always do that if I'm wrong. Adam says, Fickell says you don't just throw him in there to see what you have regarding Carter Smith. Yeah, I mean, I hear that, and I'm not saying you're agreeing with that, Adam, but you do if your other quarterbacks want a 13 to start games. You just have to. You have to make a change. I still think Daniel Neal gives you something. And I know he didn't play well earlier this year. He also got the crap beat out of him. Daniel Neal got pulverized. Some of that was on him. He held the ball too long. Guess what? That's what happens to young quarterbacks behind an offense line that's not good enough and you can't run the ball. I would turn back to Daniel Neal and I'd have a package for Carter Smith. All right, we're going to take a second there. Thank you all for indulging me on my little bit of rant. Coming up, we are going to talk about a couple key injuries, how the Badgers will cope, this recruiting class, one of my favorite kids decommitted, and my top 5 players you have to keep in this class. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers, plus your comments. But first, a quick second for our friends of the show over at FanDuel. FanDuel is our incredible partner, the official sports book of the NBA, and the NBA is back. Right now, you can bet on all the NBA action, even if you miss the start of the game, or if you maybe want to ride that hot hand. FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay, so you can put all those into one for an even bigger payout. And it just keeps you engaged, right? Maybe your game is getting out of hand, but you can stay engaged with that live in-game betting, plus futures, parlays, teasers, spreads. College basketball is back. The Wisconsin Badgers covered their first game against Campbell. Offensive explosion. Right now, FanDuel's giving every new customer $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Head over to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, let's get to this. Some key takeaways, right? From some key takeaways from the Luke Fickell press conference. Let's start with injuries. Jake Renfro out for the rest of the year, and Dylan Jones out for the rest of the year. So let's start with Renfro. First of all, I feel bad for him. Straight up, like, these are human beings. I talked to him in practice this spring. Like, he really wanted this season, and he wanted to show Badger fans what he was about. This was important to him, and he just can't get healthy. I'll tell you this. Some players you could look at and say, is it a toughness thing? It's not with Renfro. I'm telling you, it's not with Renfro. Renfro wants to be out there. He's just hurt. He's just banged up, and his body isn't allowing him to. So in that aspect, I feel for him. But I think this is actually good for the Badgers. I do. All that being said with Renfro, he hasn't been healthy, and they haven't been able to build consistency. And it feels like as soon as he steps back out on the field, he gets hurt again. And then you kind of have to restart. I think you have to build consistency. So for that Oregon game, in an Oregon game where you saw the offensive line finally start to come together, finally start to open some holes, finally start to create some push against a really good defensive front, by the way. The Ducks play defense. Heinzen was good. And now he's going to have 2 more weeks of bye week practice. I think you're starting to see things gel. So it's certainly not that we're better because of Renfro not playing, right? And at the very least, he's a really valuable depth if you were to have him. Like, if something were to happen to Heinzen, you're probably moving Corey in or Kadenko. Well, Kadenko's hurt too, actually. So it hurts your depth. But I don't hate Heinzen being the starter the rest of the way if they can stay healthy. I thought this line was starting to put together good reps against Oregon. I like that. Dylan Jones out for the rest of the year. Toe injury. That one stinks. I think Dylan ran really hard this year. I think he was more a victim of his offensive line not giving him holes than he was not finding the holes. And as this offensive line started to gel, I do think Dylan Jones would have continued to run better and better, and he gives you depth. He gives you depth with Atuka and Cade. Now this is really a getting Atuka, Cade, Yakimelli show, and Yakimelli's been banged up. That's where losing Dylan hurts. The depth in the running back room is definitely being tested. Darren Dupree's hurt as well. Maybe you turn to Jackson Aker a little bit more, right? Maybe he gets a few more reps. I think the Dylan Jones injury, to me, hurts more than the Renfro injury, just because I like what Heinzen's doing in there. And I think Dylan and Atuka would have maybe formed a really nice 1-2 down the stretch. I don't know. It's tough to tell for sure. All right, let's talk Aiden Reeder. Aiden Reeder, who I really was high on. Inside linebacker commit in the 2026 class, is officially decommitted. I think we're reading tea leaves here. He had visited Michigan the week before and put the tweet out on X, on social media. Thank you, everybody, but I've decommitted. That's a big blow. Aiden Reeder is kind of a freak athletically, super long frame, a guy the staff identified really early. That's a big blow. I think you have to give this staff a lot of credit. When I say staff, I mean mostly the recruiting department, for keeping this class together. There are a lot of vultures right now kind of swarming around this Badgers team, trying to pick off some of these kids. And so far, think of it like sheepdogs, kind of. They've kept the flock in the pen, right? They've kept the wolves at bay. And the wolves are still circling, and they picked off a sheep in Reeder. He's not a sheep, by the way. That is a negative connotation. Just go with my analogy. But mostly they've kept the sheep in the pen. But this is going to get harder and harder and more difficult. That signing day is creeping closer. Can they keep this staff together, or this recruiting class together? I'll tell you this, a couple wins will help. Winning isn't everything in recruiting, but a couple wins, which shows proof of concept, will definitely help keep guys like Baugh and Hopkins and Latimer and Petit. They want to see progress and they want to see vision executed. A couple wins down the stretch would help. Who are my top 5 guys in this class that they have to keep? Let me know in the chat too. Who are your top 5, top 3, top 1, whatever it is? Who are the top guys in this class you hope this Badger staff keeps? Here's my 5. The top 2 are obvious, right? It's Latimer and Petit for me. I think it's obvious. Maybe that's wrong, but I think you have to keep Latimer if you can. You have to keep Petit. Latimer has a couple crystal balls to Ohio State. If you made me bet my mortgage, and this is not based on something I've been told, I don't blow smoke on this show. I think Latimer, and listen, Latimer's a guy I've had on the show. I think he probably flips. He's been to Tennessee. He's been to Ohio State. Had just a monstrous senior season. I think he's one of the best backs in the country. I had a recruiting analyst who told me, because I was talking to a recruiting analyst, not affiliated with the Badgers, and I was talking to a recruiting analyst. I said, man, 247 has Latimer as like the 20th best back in the country. And he said, no, that's nonsense. I have him at 3. He's a top 5 back in the country, easy. This is a 4 or 5-star talent, in my opinion. I think he's probably going to flip, unfortunately. I hope that's not the case. And he hasn't yet, right? He's had 2 visits to blue blood programs, Ohio State and Tennessee, and he hasn't flipped yet. That's not nothing, but he's going to be tough to hang on to. Jaden Petit is my number 2 guy in this class they have to keep. Again, big, rangy, athletic, 4-star receiver out of Florida. Also had just a monstrous season. You know, talking to somebody kind of in his camp, improved across the board, improved at a lot of the little things at receiver, kind of the route running, the intricacies of being that type of athlete. I think they could keep him. I do think they could keep Jaden Petit on board. I feel a little more confident about him than I do Latimer. Both are going to be battles, though. Petit is coming off a visit to Oklahoma. So both of those guys would be massive keeps for the Badgers. They're the top 2 on my list. I think they may be split right there. My next one up is Ryan Hopkins. It's the quarterback. Like, you can't have watched Wisconsin the last several years and not think it's super important to land the quarterback every single year. Just the more in quarterback recruiting. Here, let me throw this out there. I think the staff has been snake bitten by quarterback injuries. I think it's incredibly fair to say. Mordecai, TVD, Billy Edwards, snake bit. However, this staff hasn't done a good enough job of developing the other quarterbacks they've brought in, right? Nick Evers, 4-star from Oklahoma, didn't develop. He's gone. Braden Locke was actually a 4-star quarterback. He's gone. Cole LaCrue was in this first class. He's gone. Mabry Mettoyer was a high 3-star quarterback. He's gone. You wouldn't be in this spot if you had hit on one of those quarterbacks, right? And either you took the wrong ones, which means you didn't do a good job of identifying talent, or you took the right ones and you didn't develop them. Usually there's a mix there. The answer is somewhere in between. But you can equally say this staff has been unlucky with quarterbacks, and also this staff hasn't done a good enough job of identifying, developing the right backup pieces so that when a quarterback goes down, you have somebody there ready to take the reins. Both of those, I think, are true. So number 3 on my list of players they have to keep, Ryan Hopkins. Quarterback, modern day, dual threat guy, great athlete. They have to keep him. You got to get a quarterback or 2 every class. I would get 2 every class with how hard it is to develop them. Number 4 on my list, Dijou Baugh. I really like him. Defensive lineman, got some twitch. He's been visiting several schools. Georgia Tech sounds high on the list. He's been to a couple other places as well. Dijou Baugh is going to be hard to keep. I think they probably don't, to be honest, but he would be number 4 on my list. And number 5 for me is Jack Janda. I like the athlete. He can play tight end. He can play defensive line. Iowa's coming after him, a couple other schools. That's going to be another one that's tough to hold on to. I think Nebraska's in on him as well. But big, tall, athletic kid, can play on either side of the ball. And you just need more of those. So that's my top 5 I hope they keep. Let me go over the chat and the comments here. Let me know if you guys have any. Brian Shetty says, Petit, Latimer, Hopkins, Bond, Severs. Yeah, Severs is another really good athlete. Brian Axness, Petit, Latimer, Hopkins. Martin says 1 through 5 are all Latimer. I love that. Blackwell Lover says, Latimer, Petit, Dunmore. I love Dunmore. Dunmore was 6 on my list. So I couldn't put him ahead of a few of the other spots just because I think of positional need at defensive line, quarterback. But Dunmore is a really interesting player. Tall kid, good runner, track speed. Corner's a big need for this class. I think that's a really good one there. Blackwood Lover says, do you think Atuka has a big game this week? I think he can do what he did last week. Is that a big game where I really liked what I saw from Atuka. Well built. He reminds me a little bit of Monte Ball before he slimmed down. Is that crazy? He doesn't have the jump cut of Monte Ball. Maybe not Monte Ball. That's a bad. I shouldn't say that. I mean, Monte Ball had 39 touchdowns in a season. But yeah, I like Atuka. I think he can. I think it's a good question. But if the offensive line is gelling the way they looked against Oregon, I think he could have a good game against Washington. Now, I think we're in for some more weather. And I do think Washington is going to stack the box, especially if you have a new quarterback or if you have Hunter Simmons. So maybe that makes it a bit of a slog. But Oregon didn't exactly respect their passing game either. And Atuka still was able to go off. So I think so. All right, we're going to take a quick break for our friends of the show. We're going to come back with a narrative that I just feel like is overplayed. And I think in the comments, you guys are going to tell me I'm an idiot. But that's nothing new. We're going to do that next on Locked On Badgers. All right, let's talk about this narrative, this talking point, whatever you want to call it. And if you've been watching other podcasts, other shows, if you've been on Twitter, if you've been just reading blog posts, if you've been on our Discord, like wherever, right? You've probably seen this where Luke Fickell, former players have come out and talked about Luke Fickell has not done a very good job. And that's putting it kindly, right? Has done a subpar job of connecting with alumni, with former players, kind of extending that culture, extending that olive branch is the wrong term, but trying to embrace what Wisconsin has been and bring these players into the fold and really continuing that. I got to tell you, I don't think that matters that much. Please call me crazy. Again, this is just my opinion. It doesn't make it the right one. And let me caveat it by saying, I think if you're a head coach, it behooves you to have good relations with former players, with alumni. I think it helps if you have a good relationship with the media. These are all kind of allies that can have your back and help grease the skids, probably help make it a little more successful. But none of those former players are blocking for you. None of those former players are playing quarterback. Those are not your lack of relationship with former players is not why this product stinks. It just isn't. Like, if your offense line was better and your quarterback was better, nobody would care. I'm sorry. Like, again, I disagree that it's a massive deal. I think it helps. Should he do it? I think he should, right? I think he should because it does help, but not as nearly as much as I think people think. And it's become this talking point because, again, we've gotten into, I think, piling on season where everything is that he does is terrible. And I just don't think this is as big of a deal. I don't think it's as big of a deal as it's being made out to be, is my thing. Does it matter? I think to some degree, sure. Would it be helpful? Yeah, I do think he should do it. But if his offense line was healthy and the quarterbacks were healthy and the offense was better, all of which has nothing to do with his relationship to former players in the program, then no, I don't think anybody would care. They care because we're losing. And you're losing because your product on the field isn't good enough. And your product on the field not being good enough has nothing to do with your relationship with former players. I'm sorry. I don't buy that. I just don't buy that. And this is somebody who wants those former players involved because I grew up watching those players. I'm a massive fan of Wilder and Sitchie and Monte Ball and James White and Shelton and like everybody. Like, I love all these dudes. They should be involved in the program and it would help. But is it the massive deal that's being made out to be? I don't think so at all. All right, let's see comments that disagree. Because again, I understand that I am on an unpopular side of this opinion, and I'm cool with that. Evil Badger says it matters a lot. Brian Shetty says it's only focused because of how bad we look. It boils down to just winning. Al Davis said, at best, just win, baby. I think that's it. People are focused on it because we're losing, but I don't actually think it's that massive of a deal. I just don't. God sakes, I'm not going to read that name. Says it's a symptom of a greater problem. L Mills says former players can help with recruiting. I think so, but I don't think as much as people think, especially in the NIL era. Like you talk to some of these players, and listen, I talk to a lot of recruits. Former players aren't one of the top 2, 3, 4 things that they talk about. They talk about their relationship with the current staff. Off the record, a lot of people will talk something about NIL. They'll talk about Madison. They'll talk about the other kids in their class, the 26 class. They'll talk about jump around. They aren't talking about like the linebacker that played 5 or 6 years ago. And I'll give you another one where we went out, and I say Wisconsin went out and hired an out-of-state guy and who brought in an out-of-state staff. And most people applauded it. Most Badger fans applauded it because you wanted something different. We wanted something different. Well, this is part of that. And I don't want to say reap what you sow, but like when you hired a guy without Wisconsin connections, there was a pretty good chance he wasn't going to maintain the extensive Wisconsin ties that previous people did, right? And I felt like we were all pretty good with that to some degree. I don't know. I could be completely wrong. Brian says, not as big of a deal as being made of, but not smart to build some type of relationship. See, I think this is really well said. I think this is it right here for me. This is it in a nutshell for me. I don't think it's a massive deal, but I also do think, listen, it would have been smart to do it because you can build allies, and that way when things aren't going great, there's not something easy for people to pounce on, right? It's low-hanging fruit at this point that people are pouncing on, and if you had built those relationships, that low-hanging fruit wouldn't be there. And I do think it helps. It helps to have former players in the building, especially NFL guys, when recruits come. Certainly that doesn't hurt at all. It doesn't hurt at all. But to Brian's point, I don't think it's as big a deal as it's being made out to be. Rah, bullcrap. Totally agree, Ryan. I didn't think I'd have anybody agree with me, to be honest. Martin Griffin says the Sitchy slam against USC. Yeah. Like, dude, I love Sitch. 3-sack Jack. I mean, plus a ton of other great plays. Like, I love all these players. I want them involved in the program. I don't think it's the massive deal that some people think. Just to me. Again, I could be wrong on that. Evil Badger also says Fickell doesn't have a good relationship with Wisconsin high school coaches. I think this one's more important, if I'm going to be completely honest. I don't know. I do think in the era we live in, there's probably some coaches that say, I want my recruiting director, my recruiting staff, maybe my positional coaches, whatever, to establish relationships with coaches on a recruiting front. And I'm just going to coach. I'm going to be the CEO. I don't want to do that. I still think you got to find time, at least for the powerhouse programs in Wisconsin. You got to build those relationships because that will help funnel players your way. And there's a lot of good players in Wisconsin. So this one I agree with. I do think having that relationship with the high school coaches is a pretty big deal in the state. That one to me is more important than having these deep fostered relationships with previous alumni. Just me. Again, I could be dead wrong on it. Anyway, thank you everybody for tuning in on Wisconsin as always. Bunch of good content coming up. We got a Washington crossover preview tomorrow. I think we'll be doing a fact or fiction tomorrow. Look for a 26 recruit to jump on the show, hopefully this week. We got a member of the basketball staff hopefully joining at some point. Bunch of great content coming up on Wisconsin as always. Appreciate you so much for tuning in, and we will definitely talk later.